Welcome to Overcoming Overthinking. We all identify as overthinkers here, yes?
Yes.
Everyone essentially is an overthinker. And we'll get into the details of why and what we can do about it. But it's not a question of are you overthinking or not overthinking. It's a question of how much are you overthinking. We can't help ourselves. We have this very dominant mind. And so we're going to think a lot. Wherever we go, whatever situation we encounter, when we look ahead on our life, it's a lot of thinking involved. But before we get into that, a little bit about myself. I don't know if I look like a classic overthinker, but I used to be one, for sure. Now I'm more of a meditator, mind shifter, energy healer. I teach meditation here as well. I write a series of books on spiritual teachings. I'm certified in meditation, Qigong, Reiki. I facilitate retreats for Eckhart Tolle. Anyone know Eckhart? Nice, yes. And I love being on podcasts, both of my own and others, talking about this kind of stuff. But what really makes me an expert at overthinking is the previous 20 years, where I was at the intersection of design, psychology, and tech as a UX designer, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, Silicon Valley, also dealing with pretty much every Fortune 500 company you can imagine. And that's an extremely mind-driven environment. And it drove me to the brink of my sanity. And that's really where I started becoming more aware of my thoughts, more aware of what thinking really is. And we'll talk more about that today. Today's overview, we're going to look at the habit of overthinking. So that's already a key word right there. It's a habit. We're going to look at definitions, causes, symptoms, types, how to overcome it, of course. It's all about solutions. If there's one piece of advice for your personal life, for your professional life, for all of life, is that whenever you show up with a problem, always show up with a solution as well. At least you've put thought into not just pointing out what's wrong, but thinking of what might solve the situation, make it right. That will diffuse any situation, whether it be a conversation with your partner or with your boss, at work, colleagues. It's to show up when you have a complaint, but also offer a potential solution. That's engaging, it's inviting, it's inclusive. It shows that you're not here to blame, but you're here to make things better for everyone. And you're, most importantly, involving the others. Saw a clip of Steve Jobs recently. He was known to be somewhat of a tyrant, but one of his greatest qualities, I think, is that he didn't just top-down dictate what needed to happen. He got everyone in a room and he got everyone involved in the decision-making. Even though he was maybe driving them towards the decision he wanted anyways, he involved everyone to be part of it and feel like they were part of the solution. And that's so important. Overthinking often drives us to accuse. It drives us to look for blame. It drives us to point fingers. Very often at ourselves. We'll look at that today, how a lot of overthinking is just your relationship with yourself, ultimately. Most of life is just your relationship with yourself. You're born alone, die alone. It's not a bad thing. It's just your journey of self-realization. You are here to discover your truth, not to live by somebody else's. You know, a lot of the overthinking is because we're trying to live somebody we're not. We're trying to want others to be somebody they're not. We're trying to be perfect instead of understanding that we're here to learn. We're a student of life. Life is the teacher. We're going to do a bunch of group and individual exercises. The 3 levels of wisdom. First level is to expose yourself to information. That's what we're all doing as we are right here, right now. Second is to intellectually understand it, to get it, right? So it sinks a little bit lower. And the third level is to actually practice it, integrate it, internalize it, which then you start to get into the territory of what's true for you. The greatest masters, the greatest teachers of all time, of all history, have always emphasized not to believe them. You can hear them, but evaluate on your own. What resonates for you, what doesn't? And that might be different at different stages of your life, because there's so many different stations that we work through. Something that was true for you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, is it true for you still? Probably not. Or at least it's morphed. Heck, something that you insisted upon was the absolute irrefutable truth at one point. There comes a time when you start to question that, and you recognize that nothing is true. That's a little farther down the road. You can give it meaning, but it has no inherent meaning. Again, you've heard this before. Life is meaningless by default. And that's a beautiful thing. But we have to get to the point where we remove our attachments from that. All this overthinking is related to what we think something should be and must be and we want it to be. And we can come out of the labels and the defining and the attaching ourselves to things as the truth. And we come out of our fighting with others, our resistance to ourselves, our resistance to life. It's a big thing. We're going to do some Q&A. We're going to leave more Q&A today than we did last time, just because there were many great questions and great feedback. I learned from you guys just as much. There are things incorporated into this session that somebody said or somebody mentioned, or just me walking away processing what the response was. So please feel like you can suggest things. I apply the same principles to myself as I talk about. We're going to do a special session today of energy clearing. It's one of my favorite things to do. And when we get to that, you'll see why it's special. All right, any questions? Ready to get started? Yes, all right. So, more cut and dry, what is overthinking? Overthinking is the process of continuously dwelling, notice the italics, on or analyzing thoughts, situations, and problems to an excessive degree. It often involves replaying events in your mind, obsessing over details, or worrying about potential outcomes. Those are all the key words. They all point to something very unhealthy. The biggest source of illness, all kinds of illness, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, is stress. Trying to predict your life, plan out your life. If I asked anybody outright, can you predict the future? No, nobody can. Except for the token clairvoyant over there, no. But we keep living like we do. We keep overthinking, overplanning, overindulging, overbinging in everything in an effort to predict the future. It's essentially what we're doing. And then when the future arrives, it's never like we expected it to, and then we get upset. We think we have to plan harder, work harder, think harder, know more, educate ourselves better. We blame ourselves a lot of the times. So, stress leads to illness. This is what overthinking is. Eckhart Tolle calls it a disease. And the whole planet is suffering from it. And hardly anyone notices it because everyone's doing it. What causes overthinking? There are so many causes, but here are some of the major ones. Fear of the unknown. The mind is a tool designed to know things. That's what it does. That's what it's good at. So when you task it with knowing your life, which is your future, it's the greatest unknown of all. And this is the source of so much overthinking, so much stress. So you're telling your mind, go figure out my life. Go figure out my life ahead of living it. I'm not even giving you a lot of information. There's no context. I'm sitting here on the couch. And you, mind, go ahead and just figure out my life. You get lost in these rabbit holes. One thought leads to another thought. Western psychology calls this rumination. There's actually a ton of research on this. How much of our day do we spend ruminating, thinking about things that have no relevance to the task at hand? Can anyone guess how much, percentage-wise, how much time? 80%? Anyone else? Very close, between 50 and 80%, 50 and 70 something, give or take. That's a lot of time spent lost in thought. We spend so much effort and money and time on trying to live good lives and productive lives and long lives, but no one's really talking about when we're lost in thought 2/3 of the day, what impact that has. Impact on your productivity? Because when you're lost in thought, you're not really here. Body's here, but you're not really here. And you can feel it when you emerge from this fog that you come out of. Suddenly things are clear again. When you're lost in thought, it's just muddled. It's like a swamp. And sometimes your thought sequence gets so ridiculous that even your mind snaps you out of it, says, enough. These thoughts are getting just so out of hand. And then you kind of snap out of it. And you never notice yourself drifting off into thought. You notice it when you come out of it again. And then you realize, oh my God, I was gone for 5, 10, 20 minutes. And that happens all day long. Happens when we're doing our most favorite things. Loved going to concerts. I remember being in the front rows of the Police and U2, and 10 feet away from Bono screaming, "Where the streets have no name," I'm lost in thought about a girl or school or my new car. And I remember thinking, like, why can't I keep my attention? There is no better situation that should draw my attention than I am in right now. You know, I'm missing half of the concert. What a waste of money. And I couldn't do anything about it. Probably everyone here that saw the poster, Overcoming Overthinking, already is aware that you're overthinking. We're all aware that we're overthinking. So it's not so much a question of awareness, at least for those who are here. It's a question of coming out of that wiring, that nervous system that is just runs off. It's a form of reactivity. Reactivity to our thoughts, reactivity to our feelings, reactivity to what's happening around us. We just get lost in thought about it. A situation that just happened that we keep replaying and think that somehow that same situation is going to arrive again, the exact same one. And then that time you're going to act differently. No two situations happen the same, ever. Just logically evaluating, thinking about overthinking shows you how ridiculous it is. So it's just a question of what can we do to actually practice, have a daily practice to come out of it, because it's just there right now. And we'll go into the reasons why. The greatest thing being our future, right? Perfectionism is one of those things, right? I mentioned being a student of life beforehand. We're all under the impression that we need to be perfect. Where did that come from? Well, a lot of it is conditioning. That's the last point right there. We're conditioned to not make mistakes. From the earliest age on, we're told that a mistake is the worst thing you can make. Your whole life, you'll be a failure if you make this mistake. And so our brain is a sponge at that age. We just absorb these things. And we think we have to be perfect. When that's not how we learn. We learn by falling down and getting up again, falling down, getting up again. You hear all the billionaires or entrepreneurs or the famous inventors always talk about that. The success comes from getting up again. The fear of failure is what holds you back from doing something in the first place. But that overthinking mind is always full of fear. Wants you to be perfect. Lack of confidence is related to that. We think we have to be perfect, and then we realize we're not perfect because we keep making mistakes, and then our confidence sinks. It's all connected. It's all madness, but it's all connected. And then we think there's something wrong with us, and that just feeds the next thing. So we get this really unhealthy relationship with ourselves. high expectations, similar. Right? We're told and expected to just get A's and the next grade and the next achievement and the next goal. I was very, very lucky with my parents. I love telling this story because I realized how unusual it was. It was maybe 5th grade, and apparently they saw me being somewhat nervous, and they sat me down on the steps, my home in White Plains, New York, and I was like, something's wrong, I'm going to get reprimanded, they're going to have a talk with me, and just getting, I didn't know what to expect. And they say, Chris, we noticed that you're stressed. Christopher, as my mom would call me. And does it have anything, to do with school? Because there were exams coming up. And I said, well, yeah, there's just, I have a lot to study and so forth. And the last thing I would expect for them to say came next, and that is, don't stress, just get C's. And I thought to myself, I can do better than that. Maybe it was reverse psychology, but it worked. I got an A- on that next exam. But I didn't have to experience the stress and was able to come at it from a place of relaxed, doing my best, getting to know myself. But I looked at all my friends, and they were stressed. They were expecting reprimand if they didn't get certain grades. And so most of us experienced that. If I didn't experience it in school, I certainly got to feel that in the workplace. You get your evaluations. It just goes on and on and on. Constant pressure. Past experiences is an interesting one. Again, the mind likes to take things it knows and project them into the unknown, into the situations that it doesn't know. So why not just grab something that you've experienced in the past and project it onto something that hasn't yet happened, just to give you the comfort and the safety and the sense of control. But when that past experience is a negative one, that's not so beneficial, because you're taking something that happened in the past that didn't benefit you and projecting into the future. Now you get even more stressed, more anxious. You expect it to happen, and when we expect things to happen, they're more likely to happen. So that's another thing, is learning to become more present, not believing your thoughts, learning to choose your thoughts, which thoughts to engage in. We'll get into that today. If you can become aware of your thoughts, right? Everyone here can go, oh yeah, there's a thought. If you can be aware of your feelings, you can, oh yeah, there's a feeling, sensation. Well, then you're not your thoughts and you're not your feelings, right? You're the awareness. You're the awareness of your thoughts and feelings. You're the awareness of your body, of your presence, of your energy. This is the consciousness from which we all arise. We're not our name, we're not our birthplace, our job title, our achievements, our failures. All these things are things that happen. And what the mind likes to do is take things that happen and isolate one moment and say, this is it, this is the truth. Something didn't work, I'm a failure forever. Listen to the words, even our language is based that way. I'm a failure. This is good, this is bad. These are statements of permanence. There's no acknowledgement of impermanence, of flow, of evolution in all of that. And that's what life is. It's an evolution. And the more we get into that flow, our confidence comes back, our trust comes back, trust in life. We see opportunities. We experience ourselves as limitless. Time fades into the background. All the good stuff that we're longing for, which is our natural state, all of that comes back. And just acknowledge that things arise and pass, things come and go. It's a huge improvement in my evolution when I went from this is a disaster to let's see what tomorrow brings. Simple statement like that showed There was a shift in me that acknowledged tomorrow's another day. My feelings right now are feelings right now, but maybe they'll be different tomorrow. That already creates a crack in this absoluteness of the mind. So, finding a way to ease, Buddhists call this anicca, the impermanence of life. Starting not to get hung up on one moment and lingering on that moment, amplifying that moment. That is what being lost in thought is. It's lingering, it's amplifying, it's dwelling. We take one moment and we hang on to it. And in the meantime, all these other moments come by, all these other opportunities, all these other experiences and senses, pleasant and unpleasant, regardless, life. Life is coming along, yet we're lost in thought, we're missing out. So true FOMO is the overthinking. That you're missing out on life. And we're lost in thought. The conditioning is really the overarching theme here. There's something about being born into the physical dimension where like, woohoo, colors and shapes and sizes and smells and all our senses, and we have amnesia about anything that's come before, and we just think this is it, and we have this big playground, and we get to live whatever we can imagine. It's not, we keep fighting that because we realize it's not actually as we imagine. There's a co-creation process there. We're not alone on this journey. We can't just make everything happen on our own. The flip side of being lost in thought is being present. And what does life look like when you're present? It's a whole different ball game. You have to be able to let go of the baggage of the past to be present. You have to be able to let go of the expectations of the future to be present. In that little window of presence, there's no room for anxiety, for fear, for control, for bringing in the past, for lack of confidence. All these things cannot exist when you're engaged with what's happening right now. The overthinking is primarily about the past and the future. Symptoms. This list could go on forever. Analysis paralysis. Anyone experience that? It's amazing that that word exists because it's awesome, right? That phrase, analysis paralysis. A lot of this is just known, right? If you go on LinkedIn, there's all these workshops and practitioners and programs you can join to help you make better decisions and life hacks and all that. Everyone experiences this when they go shopping in the cereal aisle. It's like, I don't know which one to pick. Choice overload, similar thing. You can think of dating apps. It's present everywhere. The mind works on comparison. So all it can do is look at this and another one, another example, and then somehow try to choose one of those. And this is where the choice overload, the analysis paralysis comes in, because your mind doesn't know you. You are not your mind. You're not your thoughts. You're not your feelings. You're none of that. Your mind doesn't know you. It's a tool you use, but most of us aren't using it. It's using us. That's what overthinking is. The mind has taken control. It's in the driver's seat. We're identified with our thoughts. In none of my writings I use the word ego because I think it's an outdated term. Really what that is being identified with thoughts. A thought comes along and you believe it. You just let it pull you into the narrow, tight little anxious space that thought exists in. And nothing else matters in that moment when you're identified with a thought. If you do that with every thought that comes along, that's how we wind up being lost in thought 2/3 of our day. When you start analyzing thoughts, I've written books on this. Most of them are repetitive. The vast majority of thoughts that you're having today are the same thoughts you had yesterday and the day before and the day before and so on. Most thoughts are negative. It doesn't behoove you to engage with them. So if you're in a state of believing every thought that comes along, then the downward spiral happens of going down to rabbit holes, and these thoughts have baby thoughts that come along in their wake, and one leads to another. We're going to do a monkey mind exercise today, but you realize that one moment you're thinking about this thing, 3 seconds later about something completely different, with no connection between them. It's remarkable how fickle and fallible the mind is. Yet we've made our most life-important decisions based on the mind. We all got here. We have a few decades of life under our belt, all of us, making decisions with this unruly mind. It's a miracle we got anything done. Self-doubt, second-guessing. One of the most common questions is, how can you tell the difference between a mind-made thought and your true calling? The simplest advice is wait a day. Or even just wait an hour. Take a shower. And is the thought that you thought was the brilliant, life-changing discovery still there? Or are you thinking about something else again? Have you lost faith in that? Because a mind-made thought is just not consistent. It just changes. It morphs. So there's something to be said for not acting right away. Just let it sit so that you can feel whether this is actually something consistent. A true calling doesn't fade. It'll come back and keep reminding you again and again, years later, decades later. It keeps reminding us to live according to our truth. Sometimes we veer so far off track, and still that voice is always there. It's the most beautiful thing if you think about it. Life doesn't want us to be lost. It doesn't want us to be small and anxious and afraid and think like we're up against the big bad world. It's constantly calling us to it. It's just we're keeping ourselves separate from it with our thinking. Yes?
Are there physical signs? Because I hear what you're saying, I'm all in. And for myself, I find it sometimes hard to, like, repetitive thoughts can also be, in my case, overthinking. Whereas the real valuable purpose thoughts are obviously representing themselves as well. I tend to think that something physical occurs in the latter.
I asked Marianne Williamson the same question a similar question one time. The way she described it was the place from which the thought arises. It feels very different. And so if you're talking about physical sensations, try to track and just notice where you're feeling that. The gut, the instinct, right? The heart space, the higher self, the inner divinity, that's all. Your wisdom is in your body. And mind-made thoughts are just in your head. So I would start there. It's a great question. It's all about staying connected to your body. This is how you feel your truth. It's not something that you know. You can't create your inner truth or inherit it. It's something that you feel. Something resonates, something doesn't resonate. That's your truth right there. And you really want to get to a place where you're operating, you're living your life based on full body yes. You've heard that term. Or full body no. It's our inner blueprint. That's what resonates. It resonates differently for everyone. And when you are connected to your blueprint, you don't feel offended if somebody else has a different opinion. You wish for them to have their inner truth, for them to be connected to their blueprint, because it does feel so rock solid. It's an inclusive energy. You can feel the trust, the openness, the aliveness of it. You want everyone to have their truth. The mind-made truth is closed off, you get defensive. Anything you read or anyone else says, you feel triggered. You want to control. One of my favorite teachers, Joseph Campbell, his big line is follow your bliss. So when you're tuning into where is this coming from, really just feel, does it feel good? And the more refined we get at feeling our feelings fully without interfering, injecting ourselves, we'll talk about that today, reactivity, the more we can just live by our inner voice. It's right there. We got a GPS. It's built in. Every situation comes along. And the important thing is your inner voice can only respond to the present moment of what actually is. Sitting at home on your sofa, it has nothing to respond to. That's when you're in your head. So one of the big things in life is to start doing. I also teach writing classes. And the majority of blocks and issues and organizational stuff would be resolved if you just sit down and start writing. Because it's not you who's writing. You're the vessel, it's coming through you, but you're a co-creator in this process. You're putting your voice, your experience on something that wants to be expressed. And that something is not you. One thing I remember from grad school is when somebody taps you on the shoulder, say you've been focused, somebody walks by and just gives you a tap. It takes 23 minutes to find back to the place of concentration that you were at before. And that's just a tap, let alone a conversation. Now just imagine we do that to ourselves with our own thoughts. The monkey mind is so fickle, it produces a new thought every few seconds. We can't stay focused on something for more than a few seconds. Wow. Those of you who are into manifestation, very few people talk about this. They say, yeah, you're supposed to feel like it's already here, and you know, when it actually shows up, then you recognize it because you're not coming from a place of lack. That's all right, but nobody really mentions the fact that we can't create a consistent enough frequency to attract things. Because your mind is jumping around, one branch to the next. How do you expect to manifest your best life from there? So coming out of overthinking will change your life. Change your life. Another sign is feeling uninspired. This is one of the first things I noticed before my awakening, before I even had any interest in spirituality, mindfulness, is I would have these debates with my friends, with my mom, and great debates, open debates. And at the end, I would feel exhausted. I would just feel like the life had left me. And I never understood why. I was like, we just had this great conversation. Everyone's kind of, has an opinion, this or that, but amongst wise people, why do I feel so depleted? Why do I feel like I have to recover from this? It hadn't dawned on me yet that we were getting so into our heads about things. Went to take singing lessons. I write music. So I went to a singing instructor and played a song on the piano and finished and looked over, and she said, the first thing we have to work on is your inner voice. I was like, inner voice, what's that? And that was kind of one of the early introductions to all of this. She was also a sound healer, practitioner, and had her whole bowl set up. And we spent so much time trying to get me out of my head. My mom's side is German. They're very mental. And I had a lot of that in me. And I would notice that if I went to a session in the morning, I'd be especially in my head. Whereas in the afternoon or in the evening, my energy had kind of spread out more throughout the body. I maybe played tennis throughout the day or played music and designed, taught classes. But in the morning, my energy was way packed up in my head. Spent years moving it throughout the rest of my body. So you have to, look at yourself, know yourself. Some of us are just more mind-driven than others. Limiting beliefs. Everything is possible. Everything exists. Right? Does the tree that falls in the forest still fall when nobody's looking? All these things point to the fact that everything exists whether we have an opinion about it or not. Everything's happening whether we have an opinion about it or not. We're so identified with our thoughts, we think the thing is happening to either upset us or to make us happy. We literally think like the world is here to control us. We live like we're at the mercy of our environment when we're glued to our thoughts, our opinions, our judgments, our labels, our definitions about things. And that creates separateness. Everything that you label, everything you define, everything that you judge, you're saying, I'm over here, and that which I label, define, and judge is over there. Distance, separateness. And you do this hundreds and hundreds of times every day with everything, even with our loved ones. Our language is designed like this. We're raised to say, this is a rose or this is an apple. Few parents have the wisdom to say, this is what we call a rose, and this is what we call an apple. To already start creating a sense of awareness and perspective in the little ones. Those of you who have kids. And so we come along and everything's possible and we just look at this little sliver and this little sliver and this little sliver and we make it our truth. The mind just says, this is what I believe in. I call it a truth structure. A truth structure that sits on top of a control grid, because that's what the mind is trying to do this entire time, just control things. Project into the unknown, just so it can know something. You can feel what an anxious place that is. How we can only see a few things. The mind is diametrically opposed to the unknown, which is where creativity lives. This is where our trust in life comes from. This is where our inspiration comes from. Our connection to the divine lives there. Insights, answers, everything comes from the unknown. Deepak has a great quote in one of his best books, that when you're feeling uncertain, that's when you know you're at source. So letting go of your beliefs, right? It's one of the biggest challenges of our journey. The dark night of the soul, anyone hear of that? That's what happens when you finally let go of believing anything. It feels like the rug is being pulled out from underneath you. And you're in this free fall. Because you've been attaching yourself to these ideas, these concepts, these beliefs. You've created your whole world around that. When somebody comes along and upsets that balance in some way, you get offended, you get triggered. We're trying to maintain this truth structure at all costs. It's really hard for new, fresh ideas to enter that truth structure, because they have to become evaluated against everything else you're currently believing. Much of our thoughts is about that. We hear something that's new, we go through this whole process of, do we really accept that? And most of the time the answer is no. You can see in our search algorithms, you can see in voting maps how we become clustered in our beliefs. We rarely expose ourselves to something new, something unknown anymore. So much of our suffering is just embedded deeply in the way we live, the way we operate. And even there, life has the most simple method to snap us out of it, to get us out of our head and into our body. And that is our senses. Things you can see and taste and touch and smell and feel. You can't smell something from yesterday. You can't hear something that'll happen tomorrow. Everything you pick up with your senses, sensory perceptions, is always the present moment. You can trust that. So if you're lost in thought, just go look at a blossom. Look at it in detail. Look at your cup of coffee. Smell the fragrance. Take a hot shower. Notice the tendency to want to think of the next thing you're going to do once you get out. Most of us never really enjoy our showers. We're in this yummy place, steam and soap and temperature, and we're already thinking about what we're going to do when we get out. And then when we get out, we forgot what we were thinking about when we were in there. The whole thing is madness. Mental fatigue. We just exhaust ourselves thinking. That's the primary source of our exhaustion, is just thinking. Everything needs to be thought about and evaluated. The mind cannot let something just be. The ultimate peace comes from letting things be. Those of you who meditate, it comes from seeing things as they are. You've heard that. Without judgment, without label, without interfering and injecting ourselves. The ability to listen to your best friend or partner without running everything they say through your own filters. Is that true? Is that not true? Just exhaust ourselves. That's what burnout is. See a few people who came to the burnout workshop a few weeks ago. First thing when I counsel somebody is to not change your life, but do the things that you're already doing more consciously, more mindfully, and then see if it's really, should you break up or should you change jobs or move to a different location, city. You could just be wearing yourself out with your thoughts because you're not seeing the beauty. You're not seeing the humanity in people. You're just lost in judging, thinking, planning. Any situation you create for yourself, any circumstance. You could be on a beautiful tropical island. If you're still subject to this overthinking mad mind, you're going to create the same conditions, the same problems for wherever you are. You take yourself with you wherever you go. Anxiety just flows from that. All of this narrowness, all of this limited thinking, this limited experience of life. To think that you're at the mercy of your environment. That this is good and this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, this is for me, this is against me. It's crazy making. Our mindfulness journey is to learn to just let that be. And we're not just judging it as right or wrong, we're pulling in the past. Or we're projecting projections from the future, bringing those into the fold in order to discern whether it's right or wrong or good or bad. We're creating this big mess around a situation that is just an objective reality of something just happened. Alan Watts has a great quote. It's not what happens that matters. It's what you make of what happens that matters. Sometimes I hear people say, yeah, this is all great when you're maybe have some savings or a cushy job, or you come from money, or your life circumstances is just good, and then you can kind of look at these things. No, this is what determines your life circumstances. And you can see that. People are in public life who seem to have it all. They have just as many problems. This overthinking disconnects us from our divine source, from ourself, from our own truth, from our sense of direction. We're all trying to get to somewhere. We're always chasing a goal, chasing our happiness, and missing out on the process. We think that goal will make us happy, even if we achieve it, because most of the time life happens differently. But even if we achieve it, it's temporary happiness. And then we think we need another goal, and we create another outcome that we chase. And in the meantime, we sacrifice our balance, our health, our joy. And that's okay too, because there's a lesson in that. Maybe many of us here have done that cycle a few times and realized there's got to be a better way. So everything has its purpose. Life is a contrast-building exercise. It's duality. There's a spectrum. Most of the things that we experience do not resonate, pointing us to the things that do. And so life sharpens us. It shapes us. And this is the student of life mentality. Recognizing that, okay, what is this situation telling me? If that's another simple question. If you just look at whatever situation you're in and go, what is the lesson in this? What is it showing me about myself? Because the way you see it is about yourself. The next person, exact same situation, will see it differently. They'll see it through their lens, through their filters. So you're always only experiencing yourself. Your subjective reality. That's what all these thoughts are about. There is an objective reality of something just happening. And then there's a subjective, the story, the narrative that we put on top of that. That's where all the pressure and the problems and the unhappiness arises from. All right, we're going to do a few of these today. You can see how mindfulness is infused into how to come out of overthinking. Meditation, breath work, journaling, all the things that are offered here and elsewhere, they all take you towards coming out of your head and more into your body. Those who are traveling through, you can probably feel the contrast of how life is back home, perhaps a job, perhaps raising a family, and being able to dedicate some time to be out of your head and in your body, generating greater awareness, self-knowledge, self-insight, grounding yourself. I'm not a big science fan. These things are intuitively right to me. That's my family background. There was intuition, stories that just made sense, that were passed along, wisdom, generation by generation. But there's plenty and plenty of research for those of you who like that and want that. Just grounding, just taking off your shoes and socks and stepping out into the grass. What that does to the ions in your body. It's amazing. We're really meant to be in nature, connected all the time. And bringing in little changes will already have a big impact. Challenging negative beliefs. If you really want to focus on that, Byron Katie, who's still around, if you can take her workshops, thework.com. I have not seen as much change in anyone than the people that go to her. It's expensive, but if you're really dedicated, and it is essentially learning to question your thoughts. Because like we said, most of the thoughts are repetitive, they're negative, they're nonsensical. That's the funny part. They don't even make sense. They're not telling you something that's actually true, objectively true. If you can ask yourself, is this really true? You have a thought about some situation, and if you can ask yourself, is this really true? It means you're coming from awareness. You're not identified with the thought. Simple question like that. It means you're not your thought. If you were identified with it, then you wouldn't be able to ask that question. But you have perspective on it. Is this thought really true? So that you can choose your thoughts and not just believe every thought, engage with every thought, give your energy to every thought that comes along. Because that which we give our attention to, we become. We only have so much time, so much energy every day to learn to become really vigilant with what you give your attention to. If it's a negative thought, you're adding that negative charge to the sum total of who you are, your energy field, your body. Next thought, that one will have a charge. If you give your attention to it, you absorb, you become that thought, the energy. So how you feel about your life is the sum total of the last however many thoughts you've engaged with. And you could have been accomplishing great things your whole life. But that one day when you've just been soaking up the negativity, you feel like nothing is working for you, nothing's worth it. So living from what our true nature is, we're our awareness of ourselves. That's what this is all about. And overthinking, being lost in thought, being identified with a thought is the opposite end of that. It's the farthest point from being in your awareness. Sometimes I wonder how we can operate that way at all. Because it is really so removed from where we should be. From where we're designed to live from being one with that greater consciousness, from living in the flow, from letting life support our mission, from not being this lonely little drop, but rather recognizing the ocean that we're part of, that's here to guide us, and support us, and direct us, and how hard it is to try to go it alone and swim against the current, try to figure it all out ourselves. Really make it so hard on ourselves. We have to listen to our body, what it needs, proper sleep, proper nutrition, exercise. These are all known things. Some may call it back to basics, but this is what is at the root of everything. If I don't sleep proper one night, everything the next day I can feel suffers. My meditations aren't as sharp. So it's remarkable. My dad was a doctor, and even he had oversights that I just look back at today, and I cannot believe the food that we ate, that was on our table growing up. Only now is medicine catching up to the idea that food might be medicine. Wow! That is so crazy. That what we put into our bodies, that might have a say in how we feel, and wow! Shows you how when you want to come out of this rigid structure, this conditioning that we're subject to, what we're up against. We're up against a world that is not designed by and for aware people. Enlightenment leave. Do you know any company that lets you take time off to go become enlightened? Probably because they fear that you wouldn't come back. You know, a few here and there, they have quiet rooms where you can go and meditate. But it always has to, I do corporate trainings, and that always has to be approved. And you can only say so much. So there's still a long way to go there. One of the most important things, you've heard this in many different places from many different sources, is that who you surround yourself with is what determines the success of your life, the outcomes of your life. You can have all these self-help workshops and books and practices in place, but who you spend time with is most important. And that might mean letting go of some people. It doesn't have to be a big disaster. Something I suggest is something I had to do, because I was realizing that saying no to the next concert or show or barbecue, pool party, and clubbing, I was outing myself. I was creating friction. But what really helped was, at some point, I became a little wiser, and I said, you know what, I'm going to read a book this afternoon. You're welcome to join me. And that by itself will have the people that are your tribe come into your fold, and the ones that want to continue on a different route. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone's on their journey. No judgment, ever. Because carrying judgment, first and foremost, hurts yourself. This whole thing is really just about yourself. You could say, live by your conscience. But to get to the point where you recognize that the charge that any words carry, that energy you have to generate within yourself first. So by the time you speak something, you've become that. So becoming really aware and vigilant of the words that we use. If they're harsh, we've done harsh to ourselves. If they're aggressive, blaming, all of this energy is coming from within ourselves first. So cleaning up our system is about cleaning up ourselves. And that's what raises our vibration. And that's then who we are. We don't even have to want to change people. We just bring ourselves into different environments, and we impact people that way without saying a word. So taking care of our bodies, your body's your temple. It really is. Listen to it. Something's off. See if there's any changes in your routines, in your habits, in your diet, in your sleeping patterns recently. Just stay in tune. It tells you what's right. Even teachers and professors and doctors and therapists and scientists have their own influence, their own life, their own opinion that has shaped them in a particular way. You can't just go to the first psychologist and just take their word. You always have to get multiple opinions and see what resonates for you. It always comes back to you know yourself best. Even your parents don't know you. Spoke of reorganizing your kind of social circle. It goes a long way. People you hang out with, that you spend time with. That may require you going through a phase of aloneness, facing your aloneness, Because so much of our safety and comfort zones are attached to the people we surround ourselves with. A lot of that is the escapism, the not wanting to look at yourself, the killing time. What a terrible phrase, killing time. And this precious life that we have, why would we ever kill even just a second? And to become really comfortable with yourself first and foremost. The better you know yourself, the better you can choose which thoughts to engage in. If you're just kind of like, I don't know myself, here comes a thought, oh, I'll just believe it. It's a very different experience than knowing your truth, and here comes a thought that doesn't benefit me, and I'm going to choose to let it go. So it's all about self-knowing, self-confidence. Productive rest is one of my favorite topics. We sometimes do an entire workshop just around that. And that's one of our exercises today. You don't have to numb out and do nothing in order to rest from a particular activity. We're diverse, dynamic people. We have a left brain, a right brain. We have creative sides. We have emotional sides. We have physical needs. We're amazing creatures. And to learn to organize your day in such a way where after you've noticed, okay, perhaps you've been writing and there's a certain fatigue that sets in, doesn't mean you should just go and numb out or drink or do nothing. You could be doing something else in a productive way that nurtures you differently, that's maybe more right-brained. You could be doing something that then is exercise, physical. You could cook a meal in an intentional, conscious way. And that's creative in a whole nother way. That's one of the most creative activities. Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes. You can fill your day, your whole life, with wonder, with creativity. It nurtures you this way and that way and this way and that way. And then they all feed off of each other. When you go back to the first activity, you feel refreshed and inspired. Learning to know how much human connection do you need. And that can change over time at different periods. But we get so much inspiration from humans, from each other. Launched many companies, and there's never been a time when a group didn't come up with a better idea than an individual could have. We just have our own particular perspective, our own life experience that we bring to the table, but when you bring multiple perspectives, that's when the creative spark really starts to jump around and bring things to life. But there needs to be equal time for yourself, me time, alone time, learning to be in stillness. So learning to gauge how much human interaction do you need to fulfill your inspirational needs, to fulfill your biological needs. It's really hard to be depressed when you're around others. It just kind of lifts your mood, being around life. Even just going into nature will lift your mood. My mom had triple bypass surgery. Her main healing modality was going out to the forest and being with the trees. Despite being prescribed all kinds of medications and therapies, what healed her the most was going out and being in nature. With greater awareness, you can feel how nature's reaching out to you because you're part of it. You're one of them. When you're not labeling the tree, but just experiencing it. Staying out of the head, but just feeling its presence. You come to life. It's healing. So creating supportive environments. Rented for a long time. I remember thinking, once I buy a house, I'm really going to make it my environment. I'm going to create a room for this and a room for that, and I'm going to decorate the walls and bring in rugs and artwork. And Once I did that, once I accomplished that, I realized, why wasn't I doing this all along? There's some kind of limiting belief in here. Just because I was renting, I shouldn't be making this place an extension of me. I was missing out on the opportunity to have my environment feed me. There's judgment in me. I'm going to do some exercises. This is a group exercise, active listening. I'm going to split into groups of 2. Whoever's next to you, just pick that person. One person starts out as the speaker, and the other one as the listener. The speaker will just talk about something, how their day went, or a recent activity or accomplishment, whatever it is. And the listener needs to listen. And this, when you're the listener, notice your own thoughts of what you're hearing. Right? You're just going to notice. And see if you can keep yourself from filtering what you're hearing through your own truth structure. You're just going to listen and try to be as active and present as possible, noticing what's going on in your head. Okay? We'll just do that for a minute. And then I'll call out switch, and then we'll switch. All right, you two. Do you have a partner? Let's do you two and you two. Introduce yourself, your background, anything. Really listen. And switch, switch. Water, yeah. Okay. All right. That was the first step. Stay in your couples. This time, switch back to the original configuration. The listener is going to make every effort to be a terrible listener, full of judgment, checking your watch. I mean, do everything you can to give this person the least quality attention that you can. Okay? All right. Go. And switch. Switch. All right. Okay. All right. Very different experience. And this is essentially what we do to ourselves. Are we injecting ourselves into all of our experiences, be it a person that we're speaking to, but also everything else around us? Or are we allowing them to be, holding space for them to be, seeing them, feeling them? The speaker, when somebody's actually there listening to you, that feels really good, doesn't it? And when they're scatterbrained or all over the place, how completely disconnected you feel from yourself, from them. There was just like no value to the conversation. Okay? So it's just a crude example of when we inject ourselves into everything we experience. We suffer, and whoever's on the other side of it suffers. We're really doing life a disservice. Not really alive. Nothing, if you're just hanging out with friends, but even then, sometimes people say, yeah, but what if I'm just shooting the shit with my buddies? I'm like, you want your life to be meaningful all the time. Not just some of the time. What's your excuse? Use that question of is that true? Is that really what you want? Is to have a mindless experience, a killing time experience, a feeling disconnected and lost experience, one that doesn't really feed you, one that takes you out of the flow. Because nothing exists in isolation. Remember, the thoughts, the energy, the charge that we give our attention to becomes the sum total of who we are. We have an utmost responsibility to live a conscientious life. And the beautiful thing is the reward is instant. You feel better. You feel seen and heard and respected and alive. And the punishment is also instant. You feel disconnected and lost and uninspired and unhealthy. So it's really what you put in is what you get out. There's no delay, there's no judgment day later on that you're living towards. Every moment. The quality that with which you apply yourself is the quality that you get back. It's really, really beautiful if you think about it. And this is also why it's our responsibility. No one's going to come and save us or walk the path for us. Your happiness is 100% within reach. That also means it's 100% your responsibility. And that should be inspiring to know. It will require releasing limiting beliefs. It will require coming out of our stuckness. It will require coming out of our mind. But it's all just returning to our natural state. That's all it is. I sometimes say one of my own favorite quotes is, your job is not to make you happy. Your job is not to make yourself unhappy. Because your natural vibration is up there. It's to be one with all there is. And we're just creating this separateness through our thoughts. We're creating this weight by attaching ourselves to heavy energy. That's what's pulling us down. You don't quiet a busy mind by wanting it to be quiet. You quiet it by accepting that it's busy. Energetically, when you push, it pushes back. Or it runs away. That's how energy works. You have to find a way to approach things without friction, without demand, without attachment, that it must be a particular way. We're going to do a thought awareness meditation. It's guided, and the purpose is just to notice the movement of your mind. Even after 20 years of meditation, you're going to have a day where your mind is just unruly, it's all over the place, it's like you never meditated before. But what would make you a good meditator is your ability to accept that. Today my mind's busy. It's the path of least resistance. It's to accept what's there, not to roll over and be a doormat, but because acceptance is the first step to making change, to moving forward. As long as we resist something as it is, we stay stuck, we stay engaged with it, we stay entwined, entangled. But if we can just allow it to be, then we can move through it. We can move beyond it. So this exercise is all about that. We're going to focus on our breath, but it's not about how long can you stay focused on your breath. It's about when you notice that your mind has drifted, how do you respond in that moment? Do you accept it? No, my mind has drifted. It's not where I want it to be. And then bring your attention back to your breath? Or do you react to it? Do you resist it? Do you get frustrated? Like, why can't I keep my attention on my breath? Why did my mind drift again? What kind of mind is this? Many of you will have that experience. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because we're hardwired to react. Our whole life has been react, react, react. We live in a world that is designed to elicit a reaction from us. So if this is your first time doing this, it might come as a shock of just how little control you have over your mind. It's amazing. So again, notice when your mind has drifted. That is the key moment where you learn to come out of judgment, out of reactivity, and into pure acceptance of what is. And this is a microcosm of what happens all day long, hundreds of times. Some situation is not the way you wanted it. Do you accept it and then take action? It's always about taking action. So many people think meditation is just about becoming passive. Nothing could be farther from the truth. It's about not bringing in extra baggage from the past, not bringing in extra expectations from the future, but just seeing what's there and working with that, accepting it as it is, and then taking action to move forward. It's the path of least resistance. Meditation, mindfulness is about efficiency, effectiveness. It's about productivity. It's about getting things done. So notice when your mind has drifted and work on accepting that moment. And then bring your attention back to your breath. Okay? we made a decision early on when they were asking, should we put yoga mats in here or chairs, and will you be meditating and so forth? No, I want to make a point that you can do this while sitting, you can do this while in your car, you can do this in an elevator. You don't have to be in lotus pose in some kind of studio. This can happen all day long. There's some situation where you have a minute or two or more. Somebody's late to a meeting, waiting for the elevator, you're sitting in traffic. You can introduce these moments of thought awareness all day long. I do it while playing tennis. After I miss a ball, I bring my attention back to my breath. In those few seconds that I'm walking back to the baseline, it's changed my game. I've won tournaments, I'm winning matches that I used to lose just through that little shift because I don't linger on the ball I just missed. Or I'm not clinging to, oh, that was such a great shot, look at me. I'm moving through that, welcoming the next moment, getting ready. So this will improve your success in life tremendously. All that energy. We talked about the time of getting lost in thought, right? 2/3 of your day. All that energy that goes into thinking about scenarios that will never happen. You probably have prepared for some meeting or some presentation and anticipated every possible scenario, and then when it arrives, it's different. It's because the energy is different. Even if the players are all the same, even if the projector doesn't break, some unexpected thing happens. Even then, it feels different. The room is different in its energy. You can't anticipate that ahead of time. The day before, you think you've got your bullets down, your speech down. When the moment arrives, it's a different energy. It's a different time. It's another moment. And so it will always be different. The only way to do your best is to accept the moment, show up, see what's there. These are the tools. And then you'll notice there's a new dimension that opens up. This co-creative dimension. Ideas come to you that you couldn't have had before because you were not in that situation. But because you're open to the situation, you're open to the moment, you're welcoming it in. You're not in resistance because, no, it's not supposed to go this way. I planned it differently. No, you're actually present with what's happening, and then you see things that you would otherwise not see. And those things will inspire you and inform you and connect you and bring you closer to the people that you're talking with or the subject matter. You might wind up having a completely different presentation experience, but one that is actually connected. Very different experience, yes?
Then what do you do, like for that same example, it's the night before you have a huge presentation and your mind is telling you, I have so much anxiety, I don't know what's going to happen, I don't know, maybe the presentation won't work, maybe I startle. What do you do in that situation?
So this meditation is what I would do. Okay? So perfect. Yes. And then we can talk more about it afterwards, because that's really important. It's noticing your sensations, right, in your body. You're feeling anxious. Feelings are just like a vague bubble that are just floating around. I used to think that. When the first time somebody pointed out to me, it took me a long time. Somebody finally pointed out to me, no, feelings show up as sensations in your body. These are your feelings. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that. I thought feelings were just kind of like in my head, or I don't know, I'd never even thought about it. And to realize, no, feelings are sensations, that's a better word. A lot of emotions on your stomach, chest, love, heartbreak, lungs, grief, throat from not speaking up. Every square inch, if you're into traditional Chinese medicine, if you just look up body map, you'll just be amazed how they figured out how every little part of your body represents something, represents an emotion. And to stay in tune, stay in touch with your feelings at all times, because they're telling you what resonates and what doesn't. It's not the head. So whatever situation you're in, this is what, there's all kinds of meditation, but insight meditation in particular is about an awareness of your sensations, always staying connected to your body, moving through life with a constant awareness of what you're feeling. That's what being present is. Again, you're only feeling, by feeling, you're being present. Okay, all right, let's do the meditation. So with our eyes and mouth closed, focus all your attention on the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. If you have trouble locating your breath, you may breathe slightly harder once or twice. And once you feel the touch of your breath, return to natural breath, normal breath. Let the detail of your breath pull you in closer, closer into the present moment. If your breath is shallow, let it be shallow. If your breath is deep, let it be deep. If it's more in the left nostril, let it be the left nostril. If it's more in the right nostril, let it be the right nostril. Or if it's in both nostrils, let it be both. Notice the temperature of the incoming breath. Notice the temperature of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. Notice the pace of the incoming breath. Notice the pace of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. Notice the length of your incoming breath.
Notice the length of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. Whenever you find that your mind has wandered, simply notice it. And without frustration, without dismay, but with full acceptance, bring your attention back to the incoming and outgoing breath, the entrance of your nostrils. Natural breath. Normal breath. Observe your breath as it is, without needing it to be different. And when you feel ready, you can gradually blink open your eyes. Come back to this room. That was 5 minutes. And you can feel how the whole energy has shifted within yourselves and collectively. And even if it was just a few brief moments where we could keep our attention on our breath and not be in our head, not be in thought, those few moments already brought relief, a change in the energy, a sense of feeling smooth and connected. It's a very incremental exercise. One moment leads to another moment, but each moment brings relief. Yes? Mm-hmm.
Like it's about being in the flow of having a thought, recognizing and coming back. So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I'm smiling because the next exercise is about flow. Thoughts are just thoughts. They're just energy forms. And it's just because you're believing it, you're attached to it, that it feels anxious and fearful and frightful. It takes you out of the flow. So just recognize that it's not real. It's real when you believe it. Yes.
How would you deal with the feelings that come out? Sense of remorse, sense of anger? No?
Sure. There's the physical pain, that's real. Although, the more you practice mindfulness, the more you recognize that even the pain, there's the actual objective physical pain of it, and then there's the narrative that we put on top of it. The story, poor me, why me, this always happens to me, all this stuff. And if we can let go and come out of that narrative and just feel the feelings, and something magical actually happens. Everything seems so much less intense, so much smoother. We realize our feelings are like this. This is the waveform of our actual feelings. Yet, say there's something unpleasant that happened, we interrupt it right here and say, "Ooh, I don't want this." And it turns into this. And this is our personal narrative. This is the extra weight that doesn't need to be there. And you can call this reactivity, right? Do a whole separate session on this. And if we come out of reactivity just a little bit, 5%, 10%, 15%, and we realize these sensations, these feelings are just, they're not that intense. They're not so overwhelming. This is what the roller coaster of life is about. Because you're attached to this whole experience. Right? You're living it. You're it. And when you come out of that, you see things from more of an awareness perspective, right? You're a bigger person. You're not sucked into your reactions. And then you realize your feelings are just kind of like that. They're actually small and they're also distant. You're not your feelings. So that's, when it comes to pain, and there's some meditations that teach you to do sittings of strong determination. So anyone who wants to do an advanced course with me, that's what we do after a while. It's just by adjusting your body, that's also a type of reaction. You feel some pain from sitting, right? And then you just kind of like, I'm just going to adjust. Well, you don't know exactly if that's just a reaction to the pain or the actual pain itself. So learning to lean into where this line really is. Are you able to see this over there? Right? Where this actually exists and where our reaction to our feelings. The feelings themselves, they come and go if we let them. But if we react, same thing applies to pleasant sensations, right? Ooh, I like this. I don't want it to go. And then you have this big thing. That's what addictions are. So, coming out of this and coming into the natural flow, this is the impermanence of life, right? The arising and passing of things. That really has to sink in. It's one of the things that long time meditation is required to get to a place where just every part of your being understands that nothing stands still, nothing is absolute. There's no reason to single out one moment and make it this or that. It's just life is flow. Okay, so we'll do a flow exercise now. Your ideal day. Again, let your bliss lead you. Imagine what it's like when you wake up. Start with something that is pleasurable, a little win. Even a small win is a win, ultimately. If you can just line up some wins. This is why in the military they make you fold your uniform to a T or make the bed to perfection, because it's a win. And so create a day that is full of successes, and particularly focus on the transitions between these things. Responsibilities, if you do them consciously, conscientiously, you can fold your clothes or you can do the dishes and have the greatest experience of your life. Because you're present with it. You're feeling the material. You're showing gratitude that this even exists, that you have a faucet, that there's water that's running and it's clean. That you're standing there and you have clothes on. Everything is a miracle. If we just tune ourselves to that. So create a flow day for yourselves. Because one thing informs another. And just for 5 minutes, write this down. And the key is to stay connected to your feelings. I'm waking up, I'm feeling a certain way. Maybe I want to do a few minutes of breath work before I do anything else, or scan my body. Or then I splash beautiful cold water on my face. Can't wait for my favorite coffee that I got from my last trip to brew myself a cup. Things only get overwhelming when we think too big. Break it down. Find the bliss in all of it. When you stay connected to your passions, you think less. A lot of thinking just comes from doing stuff that you don't really want to be doing, or that you're doing in an unconscious way. This is where productive rest comes in. One more minute. Wrapping up. If you stay connected to bliss, things that you enjoy, you'll think a lot less. You'll start doing sooner. And then it really becomes a question of breaking things down into flow and continuity, smaller increments, smaller wins. Just not give your mind a chance to take over. It's when we think in too big of terms that we tend to talk ourselves out of it. That fear tends to come up. After my mom's heart surgery, she lives in Europe, she was afraid of visiting me in California because of the long trip. And so we broke it down for her. When you're folding your clothes, you're folding your clothes. Feel the fabric, the memories, where you got it from. And when you're putting it in your suitcase, you're putting it in your suitcase. Orderly, nice and organized. When you're taking it to the steps, you're walking it to the steps, or ask my brother to come bring it. And we broke down the whole journey for her into these little, joyful, manageable steps. And boom, she did it. It turned it into a great experience. Met so many people, saw things, the landscape, things she just wouldn't have seen if she was obsessed with her fear of how long this whole thing is, and the unknown. It also works in keeping relationships fresh. If you've been with somebody for a long time, notice the detail. Dr. Ellen Langer has done a lot of research on this, Harvard scientist. Just notice an earlobe or an eyebrow, something that you haven't looked at, just a detail. And that will break the monotony that your mind creates of who you think somebody is. Because nobody is. Everyone's evolving. Everyone's continuously changing. As soon as you notice detail, you see the aliveness in them, the evolution in them. It comes back, the freshness. Somebody you've been with for years, suddenly they're a new person. The person that you met, that you fell in love with. Because in the beginning you hadn't yet created the static picture of them. It's just what the mind does, how it compartmentalizes things. So keeping things fresh is staying present. Staying present is noticing the detail. In everything in life, you can notice detail, and it will bring you right out of the clutter and the noise in your head and into the aliveness of the present moment. There's a wooden floor, there are bolts, somebody thought of bringing these here, this is transport, what tree did it come from, how old is it? The craftsmanship that went into aligning them this way, you can see that miracle in everything. While you're in the detail, there's no room for all this mental noise. You can complete this at home. The vision boarding is another exercise. It's to really construct a life around bliss, around flow. Did this help with the flow? Okay. Very good. All right, last exercise is the energy clearing. As we saw here, overthinking is a reaction to things. Right? We're not just allowing things to come and go, feelings and thoughts, our circumstances, but we're adding a narrative on top. That's where the stress comes from. So we're going to do some energy clearing here. Starting with reflective writing. Think of a situation that triggers you or that usually triggers you, maybe this morning, or speaking with a relative. And just for a few minutes, describe to yourself. Don't try to analyze it, just describe what happens and how it makes you feel. And the important piece here is notice how it makes you feel. Perhaps you've been journaling already for some time. The extra effort here, what makes this different, is notice where in your body you feel what you're writing about. The sensations. Another minute. Okay. Next one. Okay. Now put your pen and paper down. Focus all your attention on the most dominant sensation that you felt during this journaling. It could be in your chest, in your stomach, your shoulders, your head, wherever it shows up. And with your eyes and mouth closed, put all your attention there. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. All you do is answer them silently to yourself. Is this sensation a broad simmering sensation, or more of a concentrated pinpoint one? Answer silently to yourself. Is its appearance fluffy or more dense? Does this energy have boundaries? Can you see the edges of it? Is this energy three-dimensional? Can you look around the sides, above and below? Or is it more flat? Now zoom in as far as you can comfortably go and observe the surface. Is it textured? Is it flat? Is it bubbly or cratery? Just observe. Moving across the entire surface. Noticing any changes in the texture, in the density. Look at it from all sides. Notice if there's a particular area that calls attention to you. Are you aware of a color? Can you see a color? If yes, is it solid or more gradient? If not, just keep observing. Now see if you can touch the surface. Just tap it. Notice how it responds. If it's uncomfortable, you can always back off. Just keep touching and tapping across the entire surface. See if you can penetrate the surface, go within. What do things look like from inside? Otherwise, just stay at the surface and observe. Notice any changes in color and size and intensity. Ask this energy, what is it here to tell you? What is its purpose? Ask it if it wants to leave you. If so, how? Does it want to dissolve or melt away or leave you through an opening? If it wants to stay, that's all right too. Whatever way it wants to leave you, you can accompany it, you can encourage it gently. You can thank it on its way out. It's been part of you for a long time. It had its purpose, but it's no longer needed. As it leaves you, perhaps it wants to transmute to something else, like fairy dust or butterflies or sparkles. Or perhaps it just wants to go. And once it leaves you, you can look back at where the energy used to be. And what do you see there now? Perhaps it's space. Perhaps it's a garden. What do you want to invite into this space? It could be self-love or acceptance. Just bring in anything you want. Anything your heart desires. Feel yourself full of this new energy. Filling you completely. From the top of your head down to the tips of your toes. Feel yourself full of this loving, healing energy you invited. Feel this energy come together in your heart, filling it completely. Emanating out into the world, to your surroundings. Share the gift of your healing energy with those around you. Across neighboring towns, neighboring cities, across the oceans, to neighboring continents, across mountains, forests, fields. See your loving energy cover the entire planet. Expanding down to the center of the earth. Precious Mother Earth. Filling her completely with your loving, healing light. And expanding up into the sky, into the stratosphere, and into outer space. Touching the moon, the stars, the planets, and the sun. Expanding and filling this galaxy, all the galaxies that lie beyond. See yourself as everything there is. And everything there is you. And gradually, when you feel ready, bring your attention back to this room. Back to yourself. Notice the energy inside of you. Notice your peace. Your presence. And your stillness. Stillness is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of consciousness. When you feel ready, you can gently blink open your eyes. Notice your environment. Notice yourself in your environment. Notice your consciousness. notice the one consciousness. Staying connected to your body, your aliveness, your wisdom. It's an ongoing practice. I want to thank you for your presence. Everything that comes through me does so because it knows it will be received. So everything's a co-creative process. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Be free, be happy, be you. I'll see you around. Thank you. Thank you.